This is section 9.2 and we're going to be simplifying radicals today. So let's start off with a couple of small ones. I have the square root of 4 times 9. Well, 4 times 9 gives me 36. So what's the square root of 36? Oh, well that's just 6. Now let's look at this other one. What's the square root of 4? It's 2. I'm going to multiply it by the square root of 9. What's the square root of 9? 3. Oh, 2 times 3 gives me 6. So that's really the same thing. So the square root of 4 times 9 is the same thing as the square root of 4 times the square root of 9. That's going to be really important for us to understand as we begin simplifying radicals. Okay, we're going to be using the product property to simplify the square root of 20. I'm going to show you two different ways to do it. Now I want to think of some factors of 20 that I can multiply together, and hopefully one of them I can take the square root of. Now this one's pretty simple because I can think of something off the top of my head. Square root of 20 is the same thing as the square root of 4 times 5. So I'm going to rewrite that as the square root of 4 times the square root of 5. What's the square root of 4? Oh, that's 2. So that leaves me with 2 square root of 5. Now sometimes I have a difficult time thinking of the two numbers. So sometimes I'll do a factor tree. And I'll do something like, okay, 2 and 10. I'm just going to make a factor tree of 20. Okay, now my factors of 10 are 2 and 5. And because I'm taking the square root, I'm going to look and see if I have a pair of numbers. Well, in this case, I've got a pair of 2's. So this pair of 2's are going to go out. Oh, and I've got this poor little lonely 5. He's got to stay home because you can only go out if you've got somebody to go out with. So that gives me 2 square root of 5. Okay, now let's look at this one. This is a quotient property one. I have the square root of 3/4. Well, I'm going to rewrite that because my rules tell me I can rewrite this as the square root of 3 over the square root of 4. Okay, now I don't know what the square root of 3 is. The factors of 3 are 1 and 3, so I can't simplify that one any further. Oh, what's the square root of 4? 2. So the square root of 3 over 2 is my final answer. Notice how we went from the square root of 3/4 to the square root of 3 over the square root of 4. Okay, now here's a couple of more. I have the square root of 32 over 50. Now the first thing I notice is that these guys are both even, so I'm going to see if they'll simplify. Let's see, so what's 32? I'm just going to start off with 2. Oh, so that's the same thing. That gave me 16 if you didn't see. The square root of 16 over 25. This one's already looking better. Oh, what's the square root of 16 over the square root of 25? The square root of 16 is going to give me 4. The square root of 25 gives me 5, so 4/5 is my final answer. Now let's just say that for some reason you just weren't paying attention and you were just a little bit lost. So let's see what else we can come up with. Let's say you didn't realize that you could reduce, so we're going to go ahead and do a factor tree. So I've got 2 and what? Okay, that's right, 16. Oh, 16. When I see that one, I get excited because I know that that's 4 times 4. Even though that's not factored completely, I've got a pair. So I know that these two guys are going to go out, and this poor little 2 is going to stay home. So I have 4 times the square root of 2 in my numerator. Okay, now I'm going to simplify the denominator, my 50. Oh, I've got 2 and 25. Oh, and I see 25, and I'm really happy because I know that 25 is 5 times 5. Oh, and look what's going to happen. This sweet little 2, these sweet little 5s are going to go out. And this poor little 2 doesn't have anybody to go out with, so he's got to stay home. So I've got 4 square root of 2 over 5 square root of 2. And then I say, oh, these guys are going to cancel out, leaving me with a final answer of 4/5. Two different ways to get to the same answer. Okay, let's look a little bit more. Square root of 20 over 4. Well, let's just say you don't remember what the factors of 20 are. Let's say we're going to start off with, okay, 5 and 4, 2 and 2. So this sweet little pair of 2's are going to go out, and this poor little 5's got to stay home. So now I have 2 times the square root of 5 over 4. Oh, but these numbers will simplify. 2 will go into 2 one time, 2 will go into 4 two times, so I end up with the square root of 5 over 4. Okay, now let's say that you do remember that the factors of 20 are the square root of 4 times the square root of 5, dividing this by 4. What is the square root of 4? It's 2. So I have 2 square root of 5 divided by 4. And once again, I'm going to simplify. 2 over 4 simplifies down to 1/2. So I have the square root of 5 over 2. So once again, two different ways. Oops, and I wrote this one incorrectly. That's a 2. Two different ways to get the same answer. Oh, let's look at this one now. This one just looks ugly. I have 1/2 times the square root of 32 times the square root of 2. I know I can't take the square root of 2. Square root of 32 is not a perfect square either. Oh, but what if I multiply these two together? What is the square root of 2? What's 2 times 32? 64. So I've got 1/2 times the square root of 64. What's the square root of 64? 8. What's 1/2 times 8? That's right. It's 4. So these work like just little puzzles. And that's it.